Welcome to Power in Words, a sanctuary for the weary soul and a forge for the ambitious spirit. In a world that is deafeningly loud yet paradoxically empty, we exist to remind you that the energy you seek is not found in the noise outside, but in the quiet reconstruction of the world inside you. We believe that words are not merely sounds, they are vessels of consciousness, capable of transporting us from the darkest valleys of despair to the highest peaks of clarity. Today, we invite you on a journey into the heart of one of history's most profound truths, spoken by a man who forged his wisdom in the fires of captivity. It was Nelson Mandela who gifted us the eternal realization: education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. But let us not simply read these words. Let us dissect them, breathe them, and allow them to reshape the very architecture of our souls. To truly understand the weight of this statement, we must first strip away our modern, sanitized definition of education. We must abandon the sterile safety of fluorescent-lit classrooms and away from the sterile pursuit of diplomas that merely hang on walls. We must descend into the damp limestone dust of Robben Island, where Mandela spent 18 of his 27 prison years. Imagine the psychological crushing weight of that existence. You are stripped of your name, referred to only by a number. Your horizon is a barbed wire fence. Your future is a blank, terrifying void. In such a void, the mind is prone to decay, to a descent into bitterness and the savage instinct of survival. Yet, it was precisely in this crucible of darkness that Mandela identified the light. He understood that while his captors could imprison his body, they could only enslave his mind if he ceased to learn. For Mandela, education was not about grades. It was an act of defiance. It was a weapon of survival. Why did he call it a weapon? The word implies conflict, a battle, a struggle. And indeed, to learn is to engage in the most significant battle a human being can face: the war against one's own ignorance, prejudice, and limitation. Biologically, our brains are wired for efficiency. We inherently crave the path of least resistance. We cling to familiar beliefs because they feel safe. We embrace biases because they simplify a complex world. To learn is to shatter that safety. It is to take a hammer to the frozen sea within us. When Mandela speaks of a weapon, he is not speaking of a tool that breaks bones, but a tool that breaks chains. These are the chains of fixed mindset, the belief that who you are is all you will ever be. Education is the sword that severs the tether to your past self, allowing you to drift toward a horizon of infinite potential. Consider for a moment the mechanism of fear. Psychologists tell us that fear often stems from the unknown, from a lack of competence in the face of chaos. When we do not understand the world, we fear it. When we fear the world, we build walls. We become tribal, defensive, and hostile. Ignorance is the root of fear, and fear is the architect of hatred. Therefore, if we wish to change the world to dismantle the structures of hatred, we cannot do so with violence. Violence only breeds more fear. We must do so by illuminating the darkness. Education creates a cognitive shift. When you learn a new language, you are not just memorizing vocabulary. You are downloading a new operating system for empathy, allowing you to see the world through the eyes of another culture. When you study history, you are not just remembering dates. You are inheriting the wisdom of ancestors, realizing that your current struggles are echoes of the past and that you possess the resilience to overcome them just as they did. Let us bring this down from the philosophical to the deeply personal, to the streets where we walk and the homes where we live. Imagine a man named Elias. Elias grew up believing that he was destined for mediocrity. His environment whispered to him daily that people like him did not become leaders, did not create art, did not understand the complexities of economics or philosophy. This narrative was a cage, invisible but impenetrable. He worked a labor-intensive job that numbed his mind, and every evening he returned home exhausted, his spirit eroding a little more. One day, by sheer chance, he picked up a book on astronomy. It was a difficult read. The terminology was alien, the concepts vast. But as he struggled through the pages, something shifted in his neurochemistry. He began to realize that the atoms in his body were forged in the hearts of dying stars. He realized he was connected to the cosmos in a way that was majestic and undeniable. That single piece of knowledge did not change his salary overnight. It did not move him out of his small apartment immediately. But it changed him. He walked differently. He looked at the night sky not as a dark void, but as a map of his origins. This new self-concept, this educational efficacy, gave him the confidence to speak up at work. It gave him the hunger to learn mathematics, then engineering. Years later, Elias was no longer a laborer. He was a designer of sustainable housing for his community. The weapon of education did not just change his career. It assassinated the version of him that believed he was worthless. It destroyed the narrative of poverty that had plagued his family for generations. This is the power Mandela spoke of. It is the power to rewrite your own story, and in doing so, rewrite the history of your lineage. We must also address the emotional resilience that education provides. In the realm of psychology, we talk about cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt to new situations and solve problems creatively. The uneducated mind is often rigid, snapping under pressure like a dry twig. The educated mind, and by this I mean the mind that is constantly curious, constantly reading, constantly questioning, is like a living willow tree. It bends in the storm but does not break. When tragedy strikes, the learner asks, "What can this teach me?" rather than, "Why is this happening to me?" This shift in perspective is the difference between victimhood and victory. When you arm yourself with the wisdom of Stoic philosophers, the logic of scientists, and the empathy of novelists, you are building an internal fortress. You are gathering resources that no thief can steal, no economic crash can erase, and no dictator can confiscate. However, there is a gentle warning we must heed. The weapon of education acts as a double-edged sword if wielded without the hilt of character. Knowledge without compassion can make one arrogant. Intelligence without morality can make one manipulative. Mandela's vision was never about creating a hierarchy of the intellectual elite looking down on the masses. It was about the democratization of dignity. It was about the doctor using their knowledge to heal the poor, the lawyer using their understanding of the law to protect the defenseless, the artist using their craft to give a voice to the silent. True education humanizes us. It strips away the superficial layers of ego and connects us to the universal human experience. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that we do not know everything, cultivating a humility that is rare and magnetic. Think of the ripple effect. We often obsess over changing the world as if it requires a grand cinematic gesture. We think we need to lead a revolution or invent a new technology to matter. But the world is not changed by giant waves. It is changed by the millions of tiny ripples that eventually form the wave. When a mother decides to learn about child psychology to better understand her anxious son, she breaks a generational cycle of trauma. She changes the world of that boy. When a retired man decides to learn about environmental science and starts a community garden, he changes the microclimate of his neighborhood. He changes the world for the birds and the bees and the neighbors who walk by. These are the silent revolutions. This is the weapon in action. Every time you open a book, every time you listen to a podcast that challenges your views, every time you admit, "I don't know, teach me," you are firing a shot against the forces of stagnation and decay. There is a profound intimacy in the act of learning. It is a conversation between you and the greatest minds that have ever lived. When you read, you are allowing the consciousness of another to merge with your own. You are never alone when you have a library. In those moments of deep study, the walls of your room dissolve. You are walking with Plato in the academy. You are sitting with Maya Angelou on a porch in the South. You are debating with Einstein in a patent office. This connection combats the modern plague of loneliness. It fills the spirit with a sense of belonging to the great human project. You realize that your anxieties have been felt by others centuries ago and they survived. This validation is a healing balm for the soul. Yet many of you reading this may feel the creeping shadow of doubt. You may think, "It is too late for me," or "I am not smart enough." These are the whispers of the old self, the self that prefers the comfort of the cage. Let me speak to you now, not as a writer, but as a friend holding a mirror to your potential. Neuroscience has proven that the brain is plastic. It can change and grow until the very day we die. There is no expiration date on your ability to transform. The only barrier is the one you construct with your own hesitation. The weapon is waiting for you to pick it up. It is heavy, Yes, because it carries the weight of responsibility, but it is also forged of light. To wield this weapon requires courage. It requires the courage to be a beginner, to look foolish, to ask questions. It requires the discipline to turn off the distractions of the digital age and sit in the quiet company of a difficult idea. It requires you to be vulnerable enough to admit that your current worldview might be incomplete. But the reward is a life of vibrant color. The educated eye sees more shades of green in the forest. The educated ear hears more complexity in the music. The educated heart feels more nuance in the emotions of others. You become more alive. As we move forward in this chaotic century, the challenges we face, climate change, social inequality, political polarization, will not be solved by shouting matches or brute force. They will be solved by minds that have been sharpened by education and softened by empathy. They will be solved by you. You are the protagonist of this story. The world is waiting for the version of you that emerges after you have sharpened your mind. Do not deny the world your full potential. Do not deny yourself the grandeur of understanding the universe you inhabit. So I urge you today, pick up the weapon. Read the book that intimidates you. Learn the skill that scares you. Listen to the person who disagrees with you. The transformative power of education is not a destination. It is a perpetual journey of becoming. It is the sunrise that never ends. Let the words of Mandela be the compass that guides you through the storms. Let your mind be the sanctuary where the future is born. You have the power to change your reality, and in doing so, you change the shared reality of us all. The chains are ready to break. The door is unlocked. Walk through it. Knowledge is the only flame that grows brighter when shared. Like and subscribe to Power in Words to keep this flame burning and continue your journey toward a life of boundless potential.